I'm Joe. Today, I help guide you through the Ferguson, Missouri bullshit minefield. Prosecutor McCullough, after first rambling on about unrelated shit, told the world that the grand jury sees no reason to indict Officer Darren Wilson for the shooting death of Michael Brown. Now about that unrelated shit. He began his presentation by trashing all outlets of media, especially online media. Then, he moved to his love of physical evidence and ended by ridiculing the witnesses. Since when do prosecutors bring easily refuted witnesses to the grand jury? At first, the live shots of the people gathered in Ferguson showed a sea of confused and disappointed faces. But it didn't take long to see that his message was sending shockwaves of dissent through the street. As Obama was calling for peaceful protests, tear gas canisters started getting lobbed, and Michael Brown's stepdad was saying, "Burn this bitch down." Similar to the Burn Baby Burn theme from the 1965 Watts riots in LA. So the looting and rioting began. By midnight, there were a dozen businesses burning to the ground. Solidarity protests sprang up in a few cities across the country, much of them much more peaceful than Ferguson. Tuesday night, the protests returned and ran late into the evening with an increased National Guard presence, with some rioting and looting, but a lot less than Monday. Solidarity protests in other cities grew to a total of 170. Outrage over the looting spawned a flurry of ignorant racism in social media. So, how did this happen? Despite endless calls for calm protests, rage still happened. To fully grok this shitstorm, we have to go back. Way back. Because the idiots who can't even name who won the Civil War clearly can't comprehend what's happening. Let's begin with a study by Richard Rothstein, a research fellow at the Economic Policy Institute. His paper titled The Making of Ferguson. Here, he writes in detail about the discriminatory policies at local, state, and federal levels in the past century. For example, St. Louis African Americans were excluded from good-paying jobs for most of the 20th century. Construction jobs were completely off limits because they couldn't get admitted to unions. The federal government certified every white-only union as the exclusive agent for their trades. That's right. The government sponsored and promoted racism. During World War II, St. Louis saw an enormous employment boom thanks to arms manufacturing. But the ammo producers refused to hire African Americans. While some areas of the country were less hostile to African Americans at the time, this hostility was typical until the Civil Rights Act of 1964, when it slowly started to improve. That's right. Segregation, discrimination, and exploitation of African Americans was not just completely legal, it was endorsed and commonplace just 50 years ago. 50 years ago. There are African Americans raging on the streets of Ferguson, whose parents and grandparents experienced government-sponsored racism and oppression. How would you feel if you knew your mom or grandmother experienced institutionalized humiliation and oppression every day? But the Civil Rights Act didn't fix shit right away. In the 70s, public housing was demolished in St. Louis to make way for universities and other commercial interests. The St. Louis Housing Authority gave relocation assistance to displaced families. A good portion of those families moved to Ferguson and other inner-ring suburbs. Fun Ferguson fact, at this time, it was a sundown town, a town where African Americans were banned after dark. Yeah, even after the Civil Rights Act. By 1980, Ferguson was 14% African American. By 1990, it was nearly a quarter. By 2000, just a little bit over half. And by 2010, it was 67%. This was largely accomplished through a realtor tactic called blockbusting. When a black family moves onto a block, the realtor goes door to door trying to panic white people into selling their homes at a reduced price. The argument being, Blackie's going to bring down the property value. Once white people sold their homes at a discount, the realtor would turn around and resell to African Americans at an inflated price with predatory loans if they could. If they couldn't, blocks of homes were sold to slumlords who rented out the properties and never did any maintenance or improvements. With housing options being so limited and having been kicked out of St. Louis, there were really no other options. In 1970, the Civil Rights Commission focused on conditions in Missouri. Abel Allen, one of the first black residents in St. Louis suburbs, testified. Now tell me if this sounds familiar. I don't think there's a black man in South St. Louis County that hasn't been stopped at least once if he's been here more than 2 weeks. There's an almost automatic suspicion that comes along with being black. There's an obvious attempt toward emasculation of the black man. I've been stopped, searched, and I don't mean searched in the milder sense. I mean laying across the hood of a car. And then told after they found nothing that my taillight bulb was burnt out, or I should have dimmed my lights. It was something like that. Sounds kind of like present-day Ferguson. Now, with mobile technology that has the ability to upload and stream HD footage, videos of police abuse are watched in upsetting millions daily. Official policies of the 70s and 80s that are no longer in effect have been reformed as an unofficial wink and nudge harassment of a predominantly black populace by a predominantly white police force. So now that you understand some of the climate there, even though I gave you a super condensed version, let's take a look at the grand jury bullshit. The National Bar Association issued a press release where they stated, the National Bar Association is questioning how the grand jury considers the evidence before them, could reach the conclusion that Darren Wilson should not be indicted and tried for the shooting death of Michael Brown. Indeed, former New York State Chief Judge Saul Watler remarked that a prosecutor could persuade a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. Does that mean St. Louis County Prosecutor Robert McCullough, who really sucks at his job? I wouldn't give him a pay raise anytime soon. The statistics prove it. The U.S. Attorney's Office prosecuted 162,000 federal cases in 2010. Only 11 declined indictment. Though the case was heard in the state court, not federal, so those numbers won't entirely match up. Andrew D. Lipod, a University of Illinois law professor who writes very, very critically of grand juries, once said, if the prosecutor wants an indictment and doesn't get one, something has gone horribly wrong. But what we do know is officer-related shootings are best served in the grand jury room, for they very, very seldom issue indictments. In Dallas, grand juries reviewed 81 officer-involved shootings between 2008 and 2012 and returned 1 indictment. People were really hoping this indictment would set a precedent for more accountability of police forces everywhere, that police would receive more scrutiny and more public oversight. For now, it looks like the status quo has been upheld. Business as usual since the 70s. And that's why people are so pissed. And all you assholes out there posting ignorant, racist shit to social media, you need to shut the fuck up and get a history lesson. People in Ferguson, I get your rage. I do. But history is important for you also. History is repeating a 3rd time. 3 times since the so-called war on poverty. Here's a harsh reminder 22 years ago in Los Angeles.
Because you didn't make it, don't destroy my business.
Just watch my backside, Brian.
This is my business. I'm paying you. If you didn't make it, you damn bad. But don't destroy my stuff. Don't burn down my soul.
Come on, Uncle.
I worked too hard for this.
I don't even understand nothing. Come on.
It's not right. It's not right. It's not right what y'all doing. I came from the ghetto too. Same as all of you did.
Y'all need to listen.
But you know, y'all mess up my business. And you call it black power. You mad at the white man. Why destroy my business? Why destroy my truck? Why steal my computer? I'm trying to make it. Could you understand that? Can't y'all see it? I'm trying to make it.
Just start listening. I gotta do my job. I gotta do my job. Hey, man. Hey, why you doing this in your community, man? These clothes belong to some of your neighbors.
Nope.
You don't care?
I don't care.
Why?